Hello, and welcome to Impact AI. I'm John Hodges, and today I'm excited to talk with Michel Nematnejad, the Swiss-born founder of Mila Labs, who made a remarkable transition from freelancing on Upwork to building a unique data analytics and digital marketing business. After overcoming the challenges of customer outreach and balancing the dual business models, Michel now helps companies translate complex data into clear insights and strategic decisions. Michel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Please tell us, our audience, more about yourself, what drove you to found Mila Labs, and how your background in engineering and freelancing kind of shaped your approach to business.
Sure. My journey was, I've mentioned on other conversations in the past. I started on the more technical side as a computer programmer, and by working on Wall Street for the big, the big bulge bracket banks on the sales trading side. I studied computer science, got recruited in as a graduate program at Deutsche Bank, and then spent 9 years there and 2 years at JP Morgan. Really gave me a foundation of working with a lot of data because you're dealing with market data, static reference data, client data. You have to really navigate all these different schemas and build tools around them and build calculators and build publish data onto different market data platforms like Bloomberg. That's where I really got my foundation working with data. I spent most of, what is it, like 12, 13 years there. I really got kind of fed up with working with the same data set in the same, working in the same niche and same industry. I really wanted to branch out, and I got an opportunity to run the technology for an insurance company. And that exposed me to a whole new different problem set of, property and casualty insurance, where you're dealing with underwriting data, you're dealing with pricing data, you're building tools, you're repricing, you're trying to figure out if you change the ratings, the rating schedule for a book of policies, how that's going to impact your bottom line, looking at claims data, and then that whole pipeline of data, right? So with insurance, it's a pretty archaic industry. You're not dealing with just data feeds, you're dealing with hard documents which need to be scanned, translated, and input into a system. That's when I really got exposed to the different facets of taking input data, massaging it, cleaning it, adding it to some data model, and then building tools around that. I did that for a couple of years, and after that, that's when I started my marketing and data analytics business. The marketing really came along because I'd never sold anything in my life, and it's a lot easier to sell marketing services than it is data analytics. A lot more people at the time at least, needed marketing help, right? So whether it's Google ads, Meta ads, and I had plenty of experience from that at the insurance company. Insurance is heavily involved in buying leads and generate lead generation as well. So that's where I really got a lot of experience with marketing, and it translated well into the freelance world. Things were slow at the beginning, as with any business, and then COVID came along, and it was just shot in the arm. Suddenly, everyone needed marketing help as well as analyzing the data because they were growing at a rate which they had never experienced, especially in the e-commerce space. They didn't know how to optimize, how to use the data that they've accumulated from higher traffic or higher sales into revamping their projections or building more resilient financial reporting. It was really exciting time because I was just jumping from industry to industry, week to week, and whereas I'd literally been like the fintech industry for the past 14 years. So it was really exciting to get experience. I mean, everything from like fireworks businesses to law firms, shoe sellers, wood chopping companies, so companies which would chop wood at large scale.
Hmm.
They wanted to optimize, or they wanted to maximize the capacity, the utilization capacity of the machinery. Just it was just like a whole new set of problem sets, and it was very exciting because you learn a lot about a business by having a telescopic and microscopic view of the data, right?
Right.
A lot of times you're building dashboards which show things at a very high level, but the real value is in uh, is in dissecting insights at the lower granular level of the data. So, you look at the higher level data and it's telling you one thing, and then you need to create that attribution by drilling down on the data and explaining why results have um, evolved the way that they have with a company.
Right.
So it was really exciting for me to learn a lot about different businesses, everything from local mom and pop companies to mid cap companies. It was really exciting. Um, and that's where I am now. Now I think we're in a new leg of the company. Whereas a lot of the tools that we built were high value, now a lot of them are becoming commoditized with the new tooling that's coming out. There's the AI tools that are coming out are just so powerful that while it may have um, thinned the margins on previous services, it's created a lot of opportunities, which I think we need to capitalize on, right? Um, and that's the evolution we're going through right now. It's to figure out how we can take these tools that are coming out and basically provide more to our clients uh, at both depth and at scale to
Yeah.
other people. So I think a lot of people are wrestling with this. I think it's an exciting challenge. Um, my view is that AI is going to be an enabler more than it's going to be a disabler for labor. Um, just the opportunities are so vast now. There's no shortage of problems that need to be solved.
Right.
And the shelf life of these solutions might be shorter, but you know at the end of the day, we're building solutions on top of each other. So that's my general view, and we're trying to capitalize on that.
Yeah. Well, what was one of your earliest lessons that you learned about the misuse of data from your time building dashboards and reports for clients? Um, did you, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think the way data is misused the most, and I see that with marketing especially. Um, I work in tandem with, uh, a lot of times I'm brought on as like a virtual CMO to help a company with an agency that they're working with as well. And oftentimes, they'll just be very selective in the data that they show. The most misused way, the the way data is misused the most is you you can't look at just isolated periods in the data. Oh, look, this week we had a this week we had a ROAS of a 4 versus a ROAS, typical ROAS of, let's say, a 2. Those are vanity metrics that you're really trying to appeal to the client to placate them while you're trying to figure out how to get the real result, which is long-term growth.
Right.
Um, I think that's how most clients get fooled the most, is when they look at the results in isolation and not as how it fits into a general pattern over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that duration could vary from client to client. Some clients only care about that week. Other clients, they care about the year to date or where they're going to be next year. My view is always more holistic. You have to look at things from a lifetime value. and cost of acquisition and lifetime value, let's say for marketing, or whether it's a fintech company, are they justifying their margins? Do they have enough margin in the products that they sell um, to meet their financial goals at the end of the year? Not just whether a salesperson has been able to close 20 deals. If they're not underwriting those deals properly, for instance, then you know that's not a metric that should be shined. It's really the bottom line which they bring in, they contribute towards at the end of the year, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. So, can you share an example where, talking about leaning more towards our topic today, an example where democratizing data internally created more confusion than clarity in the decision making?
Um, I've seen that more in the financial, in I've seen this with companies where so there's an obvious scenario in which this occurs in marketing, right? Um, now that you have like these different marketing tools and dashboards you can build for marketing, let's say your paid ads channel or your paid media channel or your social channels. Um, a marketing team typically cares most about ROAS, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the ROAS in which they care about doesn't typically factor in returns.
Hmm.
So returns that say on a typical business could be anything from, you know, 5 to 15, 20%, right? Depending on like whether the customer needs to try it on, or quality issues or whatever it is, but let's say it's between 5 and 15% is a typical return. The marketing team really only cares about what the ROAS is, i.e., they put $1 in and they get $2 or $3 out of it. You show that to the financial team, and they're gonna ask so many questions, right? They're like, okay, if our ROAS is 3, why are we at negative profits for the month?
Hmm.
You know, so uh, so that means the ROAS is not really material to the controlling team. It actually confuses them a little bit because they want to know what the net sales and net of ad spend, for instance, is, so that they can figure out is this a profitable channel or not.
Yeah.
You know, sales throw people off. Like having sales is great for the marketing team because it increases revenue, but it does diminish the margins, which could result in a net loss. And so, while a campaign might benefit the marketing team, it may not benefit the controlling. That's one example.
Okay.
The other obvious example I see happening in the long term is, let's say you put an agent on top of your OneDrive or your Google Drive or whatever it is, that basically ingests all your corporate data and enables your clients to chat with the data, right? An obvious problem which can arise is you have conflicting data, right? You have a data which is let's say a calendar which is published at the beginning of the year, and in a different place you have the calendar updated in a separate folder. You can get conflicting data if the chatbot is sitting on top of it, ingesting it, and telling the client, okay, we may be off for Veterans Day when we're actually not.
Hmm.
Um, this problem is going to be becoming more regular now that companies are building these agents on top of the corporate data. It's where companies are going to have to wrestle with governance, data governance a lot more. They're going to need to have a gatekeeper on, let's say, company data or corporate data that makes sure, one, the data is relevant, two, that the wrong people are not changing the data, right? So only the relevant parties have access to the data. And three, that it's current. Um, Otherwise, you're going to get into whole hoops of messes. You're going to have to figure out, why the agent thinks that Veterans Day is a holiday when it actually isn't. So, it can create all sorts of different problems. These are just two examples. I imagine there's a lot more as well, but
Right.
those are two obvious ones which I can think of.
Yeah. So, how do you recommend balancing transparency with oversight to prevent the decision paralysis or misapplication of data?
It's a great question. I think every company at whatever stage it is in its growth needs to determine how much governance they want to be inflicting on the organization. You know, if you have an attitude of move fast and break things, then you're not going to have such tight controls. If you're dealing with if you're dealing with sensitive data which say you need ITAR compliance or certain financial regulatory compliance state information, then you know democratizing data you have to tread carefully on, right? You can't have material information, for instance, being published or given access to um, people who are not authorized to get access to that.
Yeah.
So I think every C-suite needs to decide what data is sensitive and what data is not sensitive, and then make sure that the access is granted only accordingly.
There you
Uh,
go.
yeah, I, I think the tooling around that's going to be increasing more and more,
Hmm.
especially as you have agents which are ingesting data in the background that you're not aware of. So you do need to sandbox the data and firewall certain data to make sure that it isn't exposed to the wrong party. Because, however much you want to try and block data from leaking out of your organization, uh, there are ways to get around that, right? You can record things with your phone. You can.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
people always are clever enough to figure that out.
Right. Okay. So what role should AI play in guiding users towards high signal insights rather than just, opening the floodgates of raw data?
So can you repeat that question? Sorry.
Yeah, what role, you talked about, it says, what role should AI play in guiding users towards high signal insights rather than just opening the floodgates of raw data?
That's another really great question. Um, I think I think if you're going to give AI the power to generate the insights for you, um, so you can feed a spreadsheet to any one of these LLM models, and it'll come back to you and say, "Oh, look at these are the top 10 observations I made around your data," right?
Yeah,
Um, I'd be I'm still at a stage where I'm skeptical about whether it's making the correct inferences.
right.
Um, I think if you are using these tools to interpret your data and distill these insights, these high value signals, as you put it, you need to make sure that it's giving you enough inference and interpretation around why it thinks so. And if it is able to do that, then great, right? Then you have an assertion in which you can validate or not. So, for instance, right, let's think of a base case. Let's say you have your Shopify data and you ask your Shopify data, what's my best selling product? Um, it may point out it might be the blue sweater because you sell the most of that and it has the highest conversion page on the product page, but it may not be best selling because it may not be have provide the highest gross profits for you, right? There might be another product which you maybe sell less of, but its margins are bigger and its conversion rates are higher. So you do have to have that, you have to be inquisitive enough to challenge the results in which it
Yeah.
displays in front of you to make sure that it's not just like, it hasn't scoured the internet and said, what does a great high signal data for Shopify data be? And it try and just, it takes a cookie cutter approach to a non-cookie cutter business in which you run. And so, it is, you have to assume that anytime you get the AI to take your data, ingest it, analyze it, and interpret it and display it to you, spit it back to you, you should always poke at that result through 2 or 3 iterations, i.e. follow-up inquiries, to make sure that these insights which and signals in which it's giving you is actually still relevant and actually gives you the action points you need in order to either pivot, press on the gas or optimize whatever decision you wanted to make as a result of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Are there um, are there specific AI powered tools or workflows that help non-technical users safely interact with data without, going off the rails?
So, in the past, I've always been like a Microsoft, you know, Microsoft Fabric, Power BI for the more complex tasks. I've always used that tool.
Yeah.
Um, for less complicated data pipelines, I would use something like Looker Studio, which is, it doesn't require a license, it doesn't require a login. It has a lot of connectors to existing data repositories, and it works just nicely out of the box where you can slap together a report that allows you to view the data in different dimensions. Um, More recently, I always, with that question, I'm always factoring in security. So
Hmm.
you don't necessarily want to be pushing your internal proprietary data into these LLM models because by all accounts, they're allowed to use that data to feed their engine
Right.
and optimize their models. The So I would get a subscription to, like an enterprise license with OpenAI or Gemini, where you can sandbox the data and analyze it. What
Yeah.
it does is it takes your data and it's added as an additional layer to the general LLM model. So it's useful like that. Other tools which I think are great is like N8N. So N8N.io
Yeah. Yeah.
is a great tool which it's a bit of a Zapier killer, and I don't know,
Yeah.
Zapier and Make. It's open source. You can run it on your own servers. You don't need to expose your pipelines to a cloud which you don't know where it sits and who owns it and
Right.
who's overlooking it. So you can run your own N8N server and create these data pipelines where you can take data from multiple places, connect to an agent, again, hopefully it's sandboxed, have it analyze the data and spit it back. The other tool is Cursor, right? So Cursor is another, it's a IDE that's a fork on VS Code. That's a great tool for just, again, vibe coding your way to a solution. It's really, really powerful. It really does remove the technical barriers required in order to become a developer and build tools. Um, it's something that you can get better at as well. So the more you vibe code, the better you get at it. Uh, And again, it's again no barrier to entry. It enables everyone to build their own AI tools as
Hmm.
well.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. Um, okay, and so this would be more like an open-ended question for just for you to elaborate on. So the topic, why democratizing data may be making things worse. Do you have, I don't know, like a real world experience that you've where you've experienced something like this, or how do you share us your thoughts on just that idea in general?
Yeah. So I think the more general problem with democratizing data, and if we're to define democratizing data, is it's allowing the proliferation of data with a proliferation of access to data as well.
Hmm.
So, for instance, a great example is, and this is actually it's a great case study for the problems that we're going to have in the future is something like the XAI platform, right? So Elon Musk is basically he's giving access to the X data where you can take the data from X and use that for any host of models that you want to build. Why it's valuable is because it's data published from everyone. It's and it so it's largely democratized
Right.
and it's accessible, right? The problem is that um, if you have no governance on that, if you have no way of verifying and validating the information on this platform, then you can create an ecosystem of misinformation that can that becomes self-validating, and long term it may be very, very difficult to invalidate, right? So as an example, let's say, I mean, there's some obvious topics which we can highlight, but let's say something as um, let's say something as disputed as, you know, whether um, whether Elvis Presley is alive or dead, right? Some people may believe that Elvis is dead. I think most people believe that Elvis Presley is dead, but or, but there some people may dispute it.
Right.
Now, if if a if a topic is not validated enough and you allow certain truths to proliferate, let's say you have a whole slew of content that goes out, or a whole army of people who go out and say, we've seen Elvis Presley in the coffee shop this morning, he's alive. Um, who becomes the arbiter of truth there? Who can determine whether Elvis is actually still alive or he's dead? What we're doing right now, it's pretty systematic. It's very opinion based, where the algorithm says enough people have validated the sighting of Elvis. Therefore, as far as we're considered, Elvis is still alive.
Okay.
2 years down the line, people are like, that was just a hoax, right? And now you have this kind of algorithmic wrestling match to determine whether Elvis is still alive or not.
Hmm.
Um, and that could be about anything, right?
Yeah.
Because you're
Yeah.
basically you're create. It is a democracy in terms of who wants to believe something is true.
Right.
If if uh, if if a billion people say something is true, then it doesn't matter whether it's something really happened. It's going to be declared as true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, and that's one thing that we know. We know the masses aren't always right, right? The masses do make a lot of mistakes too.
Correct.
So I think these are the types of like larger scale problems that we're going to face is that, you know, if there is no arbiter for truth, then truth becomes what most people end up believing
Wow.
or wanting to believe. And that can shape history, that can shape policy, that can shape all sorts of things, right?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. That's that's a that's good insight on that. Well, that that kind of goes through all the questions. I think it's been a good. We've hit different topics. There are different questions throughout the topic. It's been very thought provoking, and your insights are on the unintended consequences of democratizing data are, I mean, it's pretty eye-opening, I think, for everybody. Um, so if the listeners want to learn more and connect with you at Mila Labs, where's the best place to reach you?
You can drop me an email, michel@milalabs.com. You can contact me on the website. I, you know, I'm pretty available. I respond pretty quickly on those channels.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Okay. Well, great. Well, that will wrap up today's podcast. We appreciate Michel for being with us. And for those of you that have tuned in to Impact Eye, we thank you and look forward to talking with you later. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.